Hi, this is Stephen Mead, lifelong entrepreneur, business owner, and global speaker. Over the years, I've read hundreds of books and spent thousands of hours developing what I call the Bullseye Belief System. And I've used that system to develop my own companies, as well as help others learn to be specific, targeted, and focused to get exactly what they want in life. Again, I'm Stephen Mead, and this is the Bullseye Guy Podcast. Stephen Mead again, coming to you from the Groove Radio Studios, downtown LA. Love this place. The Bullseye Guy, but I'm sitting here with one of the, I'd probably say prior to me, one of the Bullseye Guy, Brant, with Brant Pinvidic.
It's got it.
Yeah, I always try and pronounce the name properly. Brant's an amazing guy. I'm going to get into his background a little bit. We're going to cover some of the cool things he's working on, but I want to share this story real quick. Brant and I met, talked briefly in a parking lot after an event with Jeff Hazlett at the C-Suite, and we were both waiting for our car, and that was our first interaction. We were like, well, we should get together again.
That's right.
And about a year later, it finally happened. And then as he and I sat and talked, it was really interesting. Those of you that have heard my story, I joke when I was talking to Brant, it's like we've been flying in the same airplane altitude. We're just in different planes.
Yeah.
Meaning he and I have done really similar things, just differently, different people and things like that. So super excited to have you down here. Thank you so much.
Right on. Glad to be here.
And this is good. This is a transition time for you. So we're going to transition into the big things you're working on. But before that, I do want to talk on the entertainment. I've pulled you up. I've looked on the IMDb.
Yeah.
Looked on Wikipedia. There are a long, long litany of shows and entertainment and things you've done.
Yeah, I had a pretty good run, when I was pretty deep into it, so
yeah,
had some balls bounce my way, some bounce the other way, but yeah, I had a couple good lucky
So let's start out from the entrepreneurial side. What and how did you get into entertainment? Then we'll talk about a few of your favorite shows, and then I really want to transition the things you're doing now. But
yeah,
what kind of led you into the entertainment side? And then we'll move into the shows.
Well, as a serial entrepreneur, I was always looking at opportunity. And as an immature young entrepreneur, I couldn't really distinguish between opportunity that were going to be actual good opportunities and ones that are just good ideas, right? Yeah. And that's a tough skill to master. So I would take runs at everything, and I thought entertainment was going to be so much fun and so easy, and I thought it was a huge opportunity. So I ended up spending all my money and time and energy and borrowings trying to get a show off the ground. It didn't work, and I got very lucky in the United States because I'm from Canada originally. When I came down here, things started to go my way, and so I kind of worked my way into it. But I would say as an entrepreneur, it was a huge failure from a sort of entrepreneurial structure. I just happened to work at it hard and long enough that I ended up turning it around and becoming a pretty successful television executive, but that was not the way I got into it.
Okay, and when you say pretty successful, do you know the total number of shows you've done?
Oh man,
TV, movie.
I mean that have been on it's hundreds now.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking through the list, so I want to ask you a couple questions on the entertainment side, and I probably, much like you, I'm a much bigger student and proponent of failure than success. I'm more curious on that. But what was the first show you did that you can remember?
The first show that I actually sold to a network and took all the way to fruition was a show called Muscle Car Makeover.
Okay.
Which was the idea that a country group named Montgomery Gentry loved muscle cars, invested in a restoration shop, and was going to surprise fans with restoring their muscle cars.
Very cool.
So we did a pilot, and I remember I'd only been in the country for probably 3-4 months at the time. We did this pilot, and we were in Las Vegas. And we were testing the pilot to see how people thought. And the president of the network was there, and I was there. And the guy who was running the focus group came out from behind the glass before we started and said, hey, you guys, I just want to know, do you guys prefer the slide or the dial technique for interactions? And the president of the network looked at me and goes, I don't know, Brant, you've done this more than I have. What do you think?
Nice.
And of course, I'd never been in a room anything like this. So I just said well, I like the slide, but that's just sort of my preference. But they're very similar, right? And he's like, okay. And so off it went. And so I kind of was my mode for many years, right? I always felt like someone's going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing here. And that's going to be a problem. And then eventually you realize oh, wait a second. I guess I do know these things now. And I have learned enough that's I do have opinions based on some fact. Right. But it took a while for me to get into that.
Very cool. Do you have a favorite?
I mean, it's hard to say because here's the thing: when you look at like what Extreme Makeover Weight Loss Edition did, it saves lives and changes people's lives. So it's hard not to take that on a personal level.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. But one of the show I probably had the most fun was one way back called Princes of Malibu, which was the original Brody Jenner, David Foster, Heidi and Spencer, Heidi Pratt, and the Kardashians. They all came from that show on Fox, and it was like. It was so big. It was so different. It was so strange. So I really did love that show. But I think Bar Rescue is probably the one that, most people know now that I had, so much direct involvement with and with John. And so I think that's one of my favorites because it's
Bar Rescue. And then the makeover one was a big hit.
Yeah, big hit. Yeah, that worked out really well. So Extreme Makeover was really
so here's my entrepreneurial questions. Which one was the hardest?
They're all tough because of the different reasons, right? Like Bar Rescue's tough because you have John's a big personality, so you're dealing with making a show and getting your talent to perform at his best. And when John's at its best, that's the best version of the show. Without John, the show sucks, right? Extreme Makeover was really hard because it's a year-long production, actually 16 months to get the show from the time we start till the time we get on the air. So there's a lot of moving parts, and no one had ever produced a show like that, and so. But for me, I had an entire team that did that for a living.
Right.
So I'm more like reaping the rewards of their hard work. It's just when you get some of these shows on the air, one of my latest one was called Valley of the Boom. And it was like a scripted show on that Geo about the history of the Silicon Valley. And it's something I was so passionate about. And that was just really difficult to get on the air because it's so many moving parts. And it was such a long shot all the way through that it was just like, it was hard to even take relief because it was like by the time you took a breath, it's already on the air kind of thing. So,
all right. And the last entrepreneurial question on the entertainment side, every entrepreneur thinks their idea is the next big idea, the next $1 billion idea. The valuation. Every idea is the best idea ever.
Yeah.
Which one did you think was going to be a big hit, but wasn't?
Oh man, that's so tough. I did a show with Roseanne Barr that I thought was going to be a massive hit that didn't really work as well as we thought. It could have gone on to be a huge hit, but didn't. I did one for Food Network called Food Fortunes, which I just absolutely loved. It's basically Shark Tank for food ideas, and it was produced brilliantly. We had great talent and great ideas, and I invested a pile of money in a bunch of these things, and I made a pile of money from it. But the show itself, because it was on Food Network and the food audience on that network watches TV shows in a slightly different expectation, the show didn't perform the way I thought. And so it was like, it wasn't this huge, massive hit that I thought it was going to be. Yeah. That was super disappointing. So
the reason I wanted to not end with that one, but in television speak, segue, parlay, transfer into, you've brought your book. So there's learning things that there's learning curves, there's information. Talk to us about your book. You've got a new book coming out. I love the title, by the way. Everything's in threes.
Yeah.
So give us the title. Let me have the book. Or actually, hold it up right there. It'll, for the people who want to see it online, give us the name. So we've got
called The 3-Minute Rule.
The 3-Minute Rule.
Yeah, and it's about how to say less and get more from every pitch and presentation.
And when you and I were talking, I loved it because the Hollywood pitch is this meets that.
Yeah. And here's the thing, over the years, I've learned that, Hollywood executives and the network executives in that pitch meeting have zero tolerance for blabber or misdirection or trying to be cute. They literally just want you to get in, give us the idea, and get the hell out. Because I've literally been in rooms where Simon Cowell walks out of CBS that he just pitched a show. I'm walking in next, and there's Mark Burnett going to go in behind me.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're not going to get in there and razzle dazzle and be like, hey, let's do lunch. That's not going to cut it, right? What's the idea? How does it work? Can you actually pull it off? Are people going to like it? That's pretty well all they want to know. And I learned that pretty quick, that if I stuck to the core of the idea and I let the network executives sort of understand it and let them fill in the gaps, because they're pretty smart about how TV shows work, I actually did better in those pitches than I did when I had an entire 29-minute pitch laid out. I found that I was getting way more better results from saying less. And so as I started to work in the business community with other business and companies and small cap public companies, I was using the same structure and the same format as I was building out TV shows to build out the investor presentations for a biotech company or life sciences. And it was like really eye-opening in that perspective.
So we'll go down two lanes at once. We've got a smart audience here. It's educational and entrepreneurial, and you just sort of cross the chasm on two things you're working on. You have the book, which has great techniques. You're also utilizing this book into the other side of the business that you have. So the book's coming out. We'll talk more about that. Talk to us about the business that you're working on also in the finance and how you're helping other companies sort of refine their pitch and get better, and you're using techniques within the book to help them. Yeah,
so when I developed the 3-minute rule, which is basically everything about your business, product, or service has to be conveyed clearly and concisely in 3 minutes or less, and I can show you how to use Hollywood storytelling techniques to lead your audience. And so as I got to the deep of the science of why and how we process decisions and we rationalize the decisions we make, I realized that you could actually use the techniques that I've been using as a storyteller to grab someone's attention, extend their focus, because human attention span is really short right now. But you're going to expand their focus long enough so you can get the most valuable information that you have into their psyche, so that when they make the decision, they have more information, right? And so I started doing that with public companies that were building investor presentations. An investment bank had reached out to me and asked me if I could help some of their clients pitch without putting people to sleep. I thought that was an interesting idea, so I went and tried that. It worked pretty well. And so I started more people reaching out. But what was interesting is I started dealing with my wife's friend was the PTA president, and she had a pitch at a presentation she was making to the school. And so I spent some time with her. I had another friend who became a client that runs a plumbing contracting company. And it's like, I didn't know anything about plumbing contracting. I always thought what I was going to do was only going to be applicable to high level CEO types. And it just became a formula. I had a very clear, clean formula that I would put every idea through that would sift out the most valuable statements of interest you could get. And I knew exactly how to order them. And so that's when I decided, this is something I want to share with as many people as I can. And that's when I decided I was going to do it as a book, because I could put that formula in the book so that you could literally take a pitch from scratch, and I do it in the book, walk right through it and have it ready to go. You're perfect 3 minutes by the end of the book.
And that's perfect. So Brant Pinvidic again. Let's talk about that for a minute, because again, I've read hundreds of books. One of my favorites, Michael Gerber, is the E-Myth, about how you duplicate yourself. And a book allows you to duplicate yourself. How does somebody find you or the book? Let's talk about that for a minute, and then we'll move back into the other one. I'm sort of jumping lanes, but
I love that.
Talk to us about the book, because this is the duplication.
Yeah, the book's coming out in October, on October 29th with Random House. And you can go to my website, brantpinvidic.com. And I'll send you a free copy if you want a free copy. I'm happy to send that to you at this point. So, and I'm everywhere at Brant Pinvidic on any of the social sites and whatnot. I'm not hard to find. So, but it's just been a really great exercise to work with people and companies to really help them deliver their message, because that's what I find is the universal pain, right? Is when someone starts to explain to me what their business does, I can see the frustration in their face because they understand it so perfectly. But when they try to explain it to someone else, something gets lost. And I've been able to, amongst all the things that I don't do well, I've found a couple of things that I do well.
Right.
And simplifying the message and getting other people to take your knowledge and translate it into their understanding is something I've had really good luck with. And it's been really great to be able to share that with people.
And I love that. So again, I'm going to draw two distinct lanes for us. Lane one is what I'm going to call the entrepreneurial lane. So the entrepreneurial lane is the book. Like you said, it's the plumber, it's the PTA, it's the small business owner who can learn the book, read the book. They can also follow you. You've got a ton of social presence. So not only is the website going to sell the book, you've also got on the website, I've looked at it, you've got 19 places to follow you. So anybody that goes to the website can follow you there, follow your podcast, get all the information on the entrepreneurial side.
Yeah, and I do, and I'm leaning way more into that. I mean, I don't do television and movies as an executive anymore. I do it as individual projects. So I have a movie coming out in September, and I got a bunch of those things because it's my core business. But, before I was building a company, and I had sold an entertainment company, and I was going to build another one. And for the first time in my life, I'm out of that mode. And now as I transition into more of the business speaking and consulting, and I do some coaching and whatnot, it's just like, it's where my passion is. I love the entrepreneurial world, and I write a column for Forbes on being an entrepreneur in Hollywood and beyond, and all the lessons I've learned. And it's like, it's really what I want to do.
Yeah, and that's what I said. The reason I like two distinct lanes is, to me, the entrepreneur is somebody who can go and read the book, listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Let's move to the other lane, the executive side. The executive side is where I think you have an amazing strength as well. And the executive side to me is, how do you get in front of an insurance company that wants to bring you on as a speaker? How do you get, you and I talked about even the political side.
Yeah.
I think the exposure for you to get more access to share the 3 minutes. Politics to me is fascinating. I delicately talk a lot about it, but there's things that an executive can learn, but your information translates into their entire company.
Yeah.
So talk about that side of the business for a minute, where a company might be able to bring you in.
And I do a lot of that lately, which I actually really enjoy, is speaking to companies on a leadership and a communication standpoint. Reaching goals, meeting goals, how to make people, hold them accountable to your expectations. Like, there's a lot of that. And really what you find that funnels down to is it's still a communication issue, more so than not. And so being able to simplify your message and how you communicate really tends to help people get their message where they want to get and get the goals that they want to get. There's a big return on that investment from a communication standpoint. So I do a lot of that. I do have a Forbes article coming about in the political space. I don't talk politics at all. But what I say in this article is, if politicians understood how to deliver their message in a clean, clear, and crisp format, as opposed to the rhetoric and the repeated nature and the big giant sound bites that they've been taught and practiced, their message would resonate far more broadly than it does now, because it all sounds like a load of crap. Everything they say sounds like regurgitated bull that they've been saying forever. And really, if you just spoke about policy and details and what you want to do in the clearest, cleanest, succinct way, it would send shockwaves, because people would be like, oh my God, that's kind of what I wanted to hear, not the crap you've been spewing for the last 20 years.
And I joke about that a lot. The Democrat, again, not picking sides, these are observations. The Democrats know how to kill it on emotional sound bites. Republicans are always trying to esoterically defend their position.
Right.
And it's not there. What I find fascinating, again, I want to completely read through the book, but for what you and I talked about, again, this proponent of positioning and scale. I've had public companies before. I was just on the phone with a friend of mine the other day. The opportunity for you to work with a public company around the positioning, the messaging, I think it's not only important to the CEO, but then if that can easily be translated into an employee base where people are on the same message, or into a shareholder base, or politics, the biggest challenge for a politician is for their, we'll call it constituents, no matter which side, to defend the position. They don't have enough of a formula. And I think there's some really interesting things you've been able to create around how to duplicate a positioning message.
Well, and it's tough, and I get it, because it's happened to me. When you are partial to your information, when you understand it fully and you've embraced it and you've lived with it, it becomes so perfectly clear to you. And what it's hard for people to understand is that it's not perfectly clear to someone else. Yeah. And so to bring them to your level of understanding requires a breadcrumb trail of information that they can easily follow and want to be entertained enough and have their attention enough that they will follow you. And I had problems with it in my own book. You know, there's the opening intro of the book is basically where I say, listen, the average business book is 14 pages intro, but the average book reader decides if they're going to read a book in 4 pages.
4 pages, yeah.
So, and that takes, ironically, about 3 minutes to read. So I effectively have 4 pages to get you to decide whether you're going to read this book or not. And then the idea is that the intro is 4 pages long. Okay, so I take a pass and I write the intro. My first pass is 9.5 pages long. Okay, no problem. I'm going to get it down, of course, right? I take a pass, I whack at it, I delete things, 6.5 pages long. So now I'm thinking to myself, well, I can't cut it anymore. I mean, this is the most valuable thing. I have to say all these things.
Concise.
I have to say all these things. You know what I mean? Like it just must be longer, right? So I'm saying to myself, like, if I can't get this book intro down to 4 pages, it's going to be a disaster. So I literally have to go back to the very beginning and get out my Post-it notes and make my board and categorize my information to try to get it down to those 4 pages. And it was because, again, I had just written the book. Everything was fresh in my mind. It all sounded so good and so brilliant and so well put together that I thought, I must say this to people. But the truth is, it's not about what you want to say. It's what needs to be said.
Yeah.
And what I found is, and I don't tell a lot of people this, but I'll tell you guys that I was so partial to that information in the intro that I actually pushed some of it to the beginning of the first chapter, because I'm like, well, I'm not going to get rid of this. It's just too good. So I put it at the beginning of the first chapter, and it was literally like, 4 weeks ago as we're getting ready to finalize prints, and I'm reading it again and going, oh my God, the first chapter is absolute trash. Like, there's 2.5 pages of absolute useless, redundant, important information.
I call it non-functional dribble.
Yeah, and I was
People are just trying to fill the pages.
So I literally had to call my editor and say, like, hey man, I need you to delete the first 3 pages. And he was just like, well, you're right, they don't forward the story, but they're not bad. I'm like, I'm telling you, I wrote a book called The 3-Minute Rule about how to simplify your information. You cannot have the very first chapter start with these 3 pages.
Right.
So that's how hard it is.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm as close to an expert in this as you possibly can get. And I struggled with it in my own world. So you can imagine what it's like for a scientist, a biotech scientist, to get his core information on his type 1 diabetes anti-rejection drug into a simple format that people can understand.
Yeah, and this is great. Again, for those of you that have been following along, the last episode I just did on the bullseye system, one of the things I said, Brant, was what you do is irrelevant, what you need is important.
Right.
And trying to figure that out. You said something else that was funny. I have an example I use all the time. Again, these things don't always translate on radio, but the way I used to do this very quickly is I would say, in your head, you're a rock star when you're talking to somebody and presenting. And I would pull somebody up on stage and I would say, I'm going to whisper in your ear. And again, in today's environment, you have to be a little politically correct. Hey, and I would whisper a song. And I would tell that person, all right, I want you to knock on the table the song, and I want all of you to listen and guess. And it would go something like this. I'm going to knock on the microphone. And everybody would guess happy birthday. And I would say, no. In my head and in his head, let's sing it together. And he and I would do it in unison. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn? The point was, in your head, you hear the song perfectly.
Right.
Everybody in the room hears you knocking.
Yeah.
So getting out of your head into 3 minutes is really tough because you think everything's important.
Yes.
But it's not important to that other person.
Well, and it's really about, on one of the scientific sort of pieces I go through, is how we make decisions, right? First we conceptualize, then we contextualize, and then we actualize. And the problem is, information that's not contextualized to somebody is totally useless. So everything you know, you have high value to when you know it, because you have perfect context.
Context
but until
is in my head.
Right, until I understand the concept of it, I can't put context to it. So first you got to tell me the concept. Once I understand that, then I contextualize it as it relates to me or my needs or wants. And then once I get that part understood, now I can deal with actualizing, meaning, do I want to partake? Do I want more information? How much does it cost? How long is it going to take? When can we start? All of those things are actualization. But if you don't lay out your information in those 3 steps in that order, you will lose value in certain parts of your information. And that's just a fact. And so when you know everything and everything's important to you, it's hard to know what order they come in.
Right.
And in the book and the way I teach and coach is I can show people how to categorize these pieces of information into the 4 categories that you can then sort of build your story from.
And so from, again, switching lanes, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, what's one of the tips or techniques or something that's an implementable, actionable thing that somebody might be able to take away as an entrepreneur? The plumber, the PTA, something that somebody can try and implement quickly.
I would do what I call the Gordon Ramsay test before you start.
Okay.
Let's say you were having a wedding and I was in charge of getting the catering done, and I had a cook that I was going to have cater your wedding that had never done cooking before. They actually just got out of prison and they didn't really know much about food. For me to pitch you that idea and to get you to sign off, you can imagine how much I'd have to explain, right? I'd be talking around in circles, coming up with ideas, trying to convince you, right? However, if I had Gordon Ramsay who said he'd agree to cook it for your wedding, how many words would I need to explain that to you, right?
Yeah.
So your pitch is going to be somewhere between the convict who's never cooked, and Gordon Ramsay. And your confidence level in that information is how many words you use effectively. If you're really confident in what you're pitching or selling or presenting or asking, you're not going to need that many words. And that translates to the audience. So when if I was telling someone instantly before they go into a room, think about how many things you're saying, think of how many words you're saying, how much you're saying it repeatedly over and over again. How much are you saying there? Because that erodes your confidence, the perception, because nobody wants to be sold anything right now.
Yeah.
And everybody is so sensitive to that. And so the more you talk, the more you say, the less confident you appear and the less they're going to believe you.
The more reasons you give them to say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more information you give them, or more and more reasons for somebody to say no. That's the entrepreneurial side. Does that same kind of technique or process also translate to the executive side? If you're running a small cap company, a public company, that's what I want to close with, is some of the things you're doing around the investment side. Is it a similar technique? Would you say it's a different one if a guy's sitting there as a public company CEO or a business looking to grow?
What I do find in the public company sector is that a lot of times the CEOs in the public, particularly in small caps.
Yeah, small cap, OTC, bulletin board.
They're a little bit still shell-shocked of what running a public company is really like. They may have been a scientist or an oil and gas guy, and they raise a bunch of money, and now it's like, yeah, we don't care about your widgets. We want you to go tell your story and go raise money and get your stock price up. So what I find is by asking them to peel back a little bit, it's the same thing. Like, you've just got to be really clear. The advantage a public company has is that they can't lie. And they can't be promotional, right? Like, you go to jail if you're the CEO and you say things that are wrong, right?
Pop and dump, press releases.
That's right. You can't do that anymore.
It's a little dangerous.
So I say, like, you have an advantage where you don't have to say things to explain your statements. If you make a statement, your audience knows that you have the goods to back it up. So you can dial back all the rhetoric. You can dial back all the convincing. If you are passionate about facts, that's great. If you're passionate about your opinion, that's bad. Because passion is not a blanket you throw over everything, right? It's a wave you use that comes in and out. And I think that even in the executive side, the idea of how do you say less to get more is very powerful.
And so that side of your business now, is there anything you want to talk about there? Because again, I've had 3 public companies. I was just on the phone with a friend of mine yesterday, and I completely repositioned his company. I can't say what it is because they've got some listing things on NASDAQ, but I moved them from being a blockchain company, which means like an internet company.
Yeah.
Like, nobody asks you, are you an internet company anymore? You're not going to be a blockchain. They're now becoming a fintech company that uses technology, blockchain, AI, or data to improve efficiencies. They're fintech using technology. It's just positioning. But that's another side of the business when we talk about your transitional
and positioning is really important. And what I find is, so like over I've worked with a lot of companies and helped them discover their message. And I end up getting in early on a lot of these companies or startups and seeing stuff. So I started sort of an investment group of my friends and colleagues and people that I've worked with to say, like, hey, I just started working with this company. They're really exciting. This could be a good opportunity. Let me send you some info. And what was interesting is the info that I was sending to my email chain, there's 100 of us or whatever it is now, but was more compelling and interesting than usually the company's entire portfolio of information. Because you
know how to do a 3-minute
I know how to
rule on
summarize it and say, like, here's what the company does. Here's how they do
this.
That's right. So I really started training companies on how to make that super clear, super clean. And that helps them a lot because in today's marketplace, everybody's doing research. Everybody's going to do their own due diligence. You just got to get through to them what it is, how they do it, and what they do well. And when you look at the small cap world, you're talking about companies that can make a ton of money, can have quarter over quarter growth that blows out expectations, but no one's ever heard of them. No one knows them, and there's no way for people to find them because they're just not telling the story. And so once I get in there and I can show them how to lay out their story a little cleaner and easier for people to understand, a lot of times it's like, poof, really good things happen right away. So I've been lucky to be on the receiving end of some of that good stuff.
And again, we're going to wrap up shortly with Brant Pinvidic, Pinvidic. If you want to find him online, he's super easy to find. If you Google him, he's everywhere. But in this newer side of the transition, finding companies who want to pitch, I know, are easy. If there's is the group open to other investors and people as well that may want to reach out?
Yeah,
what's the best way to contact you?
Because I go through, it's easy to go. Like I said, my website's good. The 3minuterule.com. You can reach me there. I'm happy to respond to stuff, and I send stuff to my group all the time. Because like I said, I've taken like literally tens of thousands of pitches in my career. I've made tens of thousands of pitches. Like I understand this stuff so fast. The second you can explain about your opportunity or the details or what you're looking for, like I know the base of it right away. So I can rip through them pretty quick, and my group can rip them through them pretty quick. So it's a good time for that right now for me in this sort of transitional space.
Perfect. So again, Brant Pinvidic, if you are an entrepreneur looking to expand, grow your business, go to the website. The book will be out in October, but if you're really looking to scale and grow, public company, entrepreneur, raising money, I am a big proponent of the 3-minute rule and emotional selling. Again, so Brant, appreciate you coming out.
Absolutely.
Tons of fun. Wrapping up here at the Groove radio station, downtown LA. Love it. Steve and me, this is the Bullseye Guy podcast. Appreciate you guys joining. Website, thebullseyeguy.com. Tune in again next week. More great content coming. Again, Steve and me, thank you so much.